Hello and welcome to the Farming Today This Week podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the Farming Minister is adamant. She tells us the government won't be backing down on inheritance tax on farms.
We have been in discussions. The Treasury have made their announcements and they aren't going to move.
A red tractor TV advert has been banned.
What this shows is that for the environmental credentials, Red Tractor has been misleading the public.
And fury from farmers who say the government's last-minute extension to a scheme that's paid them to help protect nature has come way too late.
It's going to be a betrayal for nature. It's a betrayal for farming. This is the absolute worst. It's the nadir. They cannot go any lower.
More on all that later. First, though, all week on our sister programme Farming Today, we've been taking a closer look at county council tenant farms. Now, these farms have traditionally been a first step on the ladder, often for young aspiring farmers to get a foothold in agriculture, a stepping stone, if you like, to taking on a private tenancy in a few years' time. But county council tenancies have become harder to find. In recent years, many cash-strapped councils have sold off a significant number of their farms. Not so, though, in Staffordshire, where one young farmer, Tom Chapman, is building up his herd of sheep after securing a tenancy. Our reporter Bob Huckenhull has been to meet him.
Tom Chapman is just 1 year into a 10-year tenancy at Standon Bowers in Staffordshire. He keeps 200 sheep on the 50-acre farm, realising a childhood dream.
So I grew up on my dad's county council farm, which was a dairy farm in Warwickshire. And as I grew up there, I sort of fell in love with farming. And then my mother and father were on a sheep and beef farm, just outside Rugby. And that's where I sort of developed the love for sheep.
And could you have stayed on the family farm?
So the family farm actually got turned into industrial units, and we had to shrink the size of the acreage to be able to buy the farm off the council when they sold theirs off. I'm one of 4 brothers. That meant that there wasn't really the space for me to expand on my own.
So you came here to Staffordshire. Tell us how that happened.
I met my wife now in Warwickshire, and she had family in Staffordshire, and a council farm came up for rent near her parents. So we applied for that and were lucky enough to get it.
Do you think you would have struggled to stay in farming if it hadn't been for that opportunity?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. You can always find little bits of land to rent, but to find a base of a house to start a business up in farming is extremely difficult.
So what do you actually do here?
So here on this farm at the minute, I'm farming around 200 ewes, and then we also, through the summer months, collect wool for a company called DB Wools.
And where do you see your future?
I'd like to keep building the business as much as I can. Hopefully by the end of the tenancy, if I can either move to a bigger farm within the council, or ideally I'd like to be able to buy my own bit of land and start my own little empire up if I can.
Tom's is one of 63 tenant farms owned by Staffordshire County Council. While many councils have been selling off their tenant farms, Staffordshire is keen to keep theirs. Reform UK recently took control here. The deputy leader is Martin Murray.
First decision we made, save our farms, secure our county farms, give that ability for new farms somewhere to start and to grow.
Because a lot of councils have sold off farms, haven't they? How do you feel about that?
It's a sad state. Over many decades that's been going on. We've been doing county farms since 1908. It's over 100 years this county's been doing farms. We're going to continue that for another 100 years. We're going to secure those farms, will never be sold off.
Budgets are tight as far as councils are concerned. What does the council get out of it, keeping these farms?
Our 63 farms net profit is £734,000 per year. And it is market-led, market demand.
Feeding his sheep, Tom knows he's lucky to get this opportunity, especially with a young family, and says the sale of council farms elsewhere saddens him.
It's very upsetting, really. Those farms are people's homes and livelihoods, and there's always sitting tenants when those farms get sold off usually. And also it takes away another chance for somebody else to start up on their own 2 feet.
Do you know of a lot of other people who are struggling?
Yeah, I mean, there's most people I speak to are struggling, whether it's through farming or getting onto the farming ladder. I know a lot of young people that would love the chances I've been given, which makes it even more special, really, for me to be able to get something that somebody else wants. But I understand how hard it is for them, and I wish they can have the same opportunities I get, really.
Tom Chaplin there in Staffordshire. And you can hear more on council farms. Just search for Farming Today on BBC Sounds. Next week, our focus will be beer and cider, so do join us every weekday morning here on Radio 4 at 5:45 or later via Sounds. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization celebrates its 80th anniversary this week. Founded at the end of the Second World War, its mission was to defeat hunger by improving agricultural production. Well, today the challenges are no less significant. More than 2.5 billion people around the world are struggling to access healthy diets. There's tension over trade, and conflicts are disrupting food systems around the world. So what are the challenges facing the organisation today? Dan Saladino spoke to Beth Bechtel, Deputy Director General at the FAO in Rome.
Single largest driver of hunger, food insecurity, lack of access to these healthy and nutritious diets, it's conflict. Second is climate change and climate extremes. And third is, unfortunately, just continued economic pressures and economic downturns in many regions of the world. And so we work quite actively at FAO in circumstances where we're trying to get food support, food production support, access to people in need in fragile and war-torn settings.
The last time you appeared on Farming Today was at the beginning of the year. This was the first ceasefire in Gaza that was underway. At the FAO, you lead on food crisis and emergency agricultural assistance. You talked very powerfully then of the impact of conflict on that particular food system, a part of the world in which there was a high level of self-sufficiency. Now, this week, a new ceasefire is underway. What are the priorities of the FAO in Gaza?
We, like everyone else around the world, are really hoping that this current period of peace holds. Today, the priorities still are emergency food assistance, shelter, water, given the high levels of food insecurity, hunger, acute malnutrition. So much of what was a very real and a vibrant agricultural system is very sadly completely destroyed. 98.5% of the cropland is already completely destroyed and devastated. There's only a few hundred hectares of available land for any kind of production. Livestock herds were nearly decimated. Small populations of sheep and goats still alive, still supporting families, providing vital protein and dairy nutrition to families, to children. But infrastructure like irrigation wells, greenhouses, olive tree orchards, all of that has really been completely, again, destroyed or devastated. So the rebuilding will take considerable time. It will take considerable amounts of resources, which we are in the very early days of having conversations with donors and partners who I think are ready in many parts of the world to step in and do their part to support. But in the immediate, we are ready to take animal feed, to take veterinary kits, plastic sheeting to try to repair some amounts of greenhouses that might be repairable. So you have to sort of prepare your emergency plan in some stages and be very realistic about what it is you can provide and when you provide it at the right time. But I think for us, we'll be pivoting very soon as we start to see the shape of what the political dynamics look like and how the rebuilding can ultimately take place. That's where FAO will come in and I hope have a very leading role in bringing some of that vibrancy back to local production that's happened in Gaza.
Beth Bechtel there at the UN's Food and Agriculture Organisation in Rome. Red Tractor, the UK's largest farm assurance scheme, has had a TV advert banned by the Advertising Standards Authority. The watchdog says the advert exaggerated the environmental credentials of the scheme and misled customers. Red Tractor has been branding British products, from strawberries to sausages, for more than 25 years. The finding by the ASA comes after a complaint was brought by environmental campaign group River Action more than 2 years ago. BBC climate and science reporter Esme Stallard told Anna Hill why this investigation has taken so long.
The Advertising Standards Authority typically takes about 2 months to rule on complaints. This took well over 2 years, and they said that was due to the sheer volume of evidence. What they were looking at was a specific advert that was first aired back in 2021 and ran for a couple of years, in which Red Tractor said that its farms farmed with care and met standards. Now, what the ASA has ruled is that the public would imply that that means its farms meet environmental law. And even though Red Tractor had presented enough evidence to show that its farms met its own standards, there was insufficient evidence to demonstrate that in 2023 farms were complying with basic legislation to substantiate the claims in the advert. Now, River Action has strongly welcomed the ASA ruling today after those 2 long years. But Amy Fairman, who is the head of campaigns at River Action, called on supermarkets to do more in light of the ruling.
Yeah, well, what this shows is that for their environmental credentials, Red Tractor has been misleading the public and their suppliers as well, the suppliers who buy their products. So we're looking for suppliers like supermarkets to really examine and to take stock of what's on their shelves and make sure that the labels they put on their products are not misleading their customers.
So how have Red Tractor responded, and what action do they intend to take?
So Red Tractor have actually pushed back very strongly on the ruling by the ASA. They take issue with a couple of points. They say that the average consumer wouldn't think that that advert implied that its farms align with environmental legislation. They say that there's been an error in law. Effectively, the way the ASA has interpreted the law is incorrect, that actually they've looked at just a minority of customers. And they've also called into question whether people would even recognise the Red Tractor logo as aligning itself with environmental standards. Jim Mosley, who is the CEO of Red Tractor, said the brand is much more about food safety and animal welfare.
We fundamentally disagree with the ASA ruling because they believe that we have implied an environmental claim. Nowhere in the voiceover or the imagery is any environmental claim actually made. Red Tractor's core purpose is food safety, animal welfare and traceability. Whilst we have some environmental standards, they don't reflect all environmental legislation. They're a small part of Red Tractor standards.
So how have the supermarkets who sell Red Tractor branded products reacted to this?
Well, I think that's the bigger question right now. As Jim Mosley said, in that particular advert, they didn't mention environmental claims, even though the ASA thought that was insinuated. But actually, many supermarkets in the UK do use the Red Tractor logo to talk about the environmental credentials of their products. So, for example, Natalie Smith, who is the Tesco head of agriculture last month, said certification schemes play a key role in providing reassurance for customers. And over the past 25 years, Red Tractor has established itself as a mark of quality, standing for environmental protection, she said, amongst other things. Now, I went to them and said, what is your response going to be in light of the ASA ruling? They referred us to the industry body, the British Retail Consortium, and the consortium said they stood by Red Tractor. But it's worth noting here that it's a very small industry. In fact, the consortium itself is part of Red Tractor's ownership body. So for the moment, no change on the supermarket shelves, but I think certainly River Action will be asking more questions.
BBC climate and science reporter Esme Stallard there. Too little, too late. Well, that's what we're hearing from some farmers who've already ploughed up and planted fields which were being farmed for nature. This, they say, is because the government took too long to come up with an extension to their environmental funding. After months of lobbying by farming and environmental groups, the government announced a 1-year extension to the Countryside Stewardship Scheme earlier this week. The scheme pays farmers in England for providing environmental benefits like wildflower corridors and habitats for farmland birds over a 5-year period. Well, as we reported, around 5,000 of these agreements were due to wind up at the end of December. And with the new post-Brexit scheme, the Sustainable Farming Incentive, closed for applications for the foreseeable future, there's no current programme to compensate these farmers for the lower incomes they get while farming for nature. DEFRA says this new year-long extension is to allow farmers to maintain the environmental improvements they've already made. And the news has been welcomed by the National Farmers Union, although some environmental charities say it's only buying time, not the long-term strategy that's needed. Tom Allen Stevens farms 170 hectares of arable land in Oxfordshire. He's had land in countryside stewardship for around 20 years, and his agreement was due to end in December. He told Kaz Graham this last-minute extension is just too late.
I think it's absolutely shocking that they've made this announcement now. I mean, we've been asking for a commitment for many, many months. They have known about it for well over a year that this was going to happen, that thousands of farmers were going to be exiting the scheme and they were going to be looking for a new scheme to go into. And only now have they decided to actually commit to extending the scheme. So most arable farms have already committed their land to crops that they're growing for next year. The contractors are out in the fields as we speak, putting wheat into land that used to be in stewardship. And I am not alone. This is far worse than too little too late. It's shocking. It is absolutely appalling that they have waited until now. If I was a cynic, I would say that they deliberately waited until then so that we had no choice.
What will this mean for nature on your farm?
Nature is the big loser here because I tell you, we've spent well over 20 years building up the nature habitats on this farm, and we've got to a really nice place. I tell you, some of the things that I see when I walk around the farm are a joy to see, and those people who walk around the farm from the local town tell me that they really enjoy that too. They're going to come round next year and they're going to say, where are the wildflower margins? Where are all the butterflies? Where are the birds that we used to see? And I'll say, I'm sorry, but I had to take out those habitats. That is the big loss here. It's nature that's going to lose out.
Can you explain why you had to plant wheat? Because, you've got wildlife margins. Why do you need more grants?
These margins don't pay for themselves. You're taking land out of production, basically, to provide a space for wildlife. You cannot afford to have land doing nothing. If it's not growing food, we have to do something else with our land. We haven't got enough land in this country to say, we'll just wait until the government can make up its mind. We have to do something with it. In our case, the best decision, if it wasn't going to be delivering for nature, would be to deliver food. And that's the commitment that we made. It's too late now for me to go back on that. The crops are literally going in the ground as we speak. We can't move back away from that now.
How much confidence do you have in DEFRA just now?
Confidence, and I think I speak for an awful lot of farmers, confidence in DEFRA at the moment is at an all-time low. I feel absolutely betrayed at how this government has treated us. It's not Angela Eagle's fault, it's not Emma Reynolds' fault, it's their immediate predecessors, but it's certainly been taken at the very highest level. The DEFRA civil servants have worked so hard to get this scheme to work, SFI and countryside stewardship, and they've just been let down by ministers who have failed to act. We at least deserve an apology from this. Angela Eagle and Emma Reynolds needs to sit down with farmers and actually listen to what we are telling them and try to understand what the pressures are in farming and how things work. Because this is a really, really good illustration of how shockingly bad they have got it. And it's going to be a betrayal for nature. It's a betrayal for farming. This is the absolute worst. It's the nadir. They cannot go any lower.
Tom Allen Stevens there. Well, Kaz put his points to Dame Angela Eagle, the farming minister, and asked if she was going to apologise to farmers like him who say they feel betrayed.
Well, I'm not going to apologise for making an announcement that means that the over 5,000 farmers that have been on this particular scheme will get a one-year extension while we sort out the SFI, an announcement which has cost £70 million, an announcement which has been welcomed by the National Farmers Union and the Nature Friendly Farming Network.
His argument, though, is that it's just too late. For many farmers, they've already had to commit that land to something else. And the benefits for nature that have been accrued there over many years have been lost now. It was too late for them to plan.
Well, look, the current agreements go on until December. We've made an announcement.
Any business can't plan over 11 weeks for what they're going to be doing for the next year, can they?
No, but we've made the announcement as soon as it was possible to make it. I've been in this job since the 6th of September, and I've been looking at the way that the SFI scheme has been run in the past. I'm looking to see how we can change it, certainly to get some stability and I think some simplicity, having looked at how it's working at the moment. And I'm working with colleagues in the DEFRA department to see what we can do about that. So this agreement, I can tell you, this extension has been announced as quickly as I reasonably could.
Okay.
So I'm not going to apologise for doing that.
Yeah. So why did it take DEFRA so long to make a decision on these extensions? I mean, Tom Allen Stevens was suggesting there that it was so that it would reduce the number of farmers who'd be able to apply for it because they would have already planted crops on their land that had been in stewardship. Is that right?
No, of course not. I could tell from the recording that he's a very angry man with respect to this. I'm sorry about that, but I have to point out that both the NFU and other farming organisations and environmental organisations have welcomed the announcement that I've made. So Tom may not like it. There are others that do.
OK. Many of the farmers who were on this countryside stewardship scheme were waiting for the sustainable farming incentive, which is replacing stewardship.
Yes.
But that has been closed for months now.
Yeah.
DEFRA told us that there would be details about the reworked scheme in the summer. I mean, we're well past that. We're mid-October now. When will farmers hear about it?
As I say, I've been in this brief since the 6th of September. And when you come into a brief like this and there's an issue, you want to make certain that you've looked at all the details of it. I've been quite surprised by the complexity of the scheme and how difficult it is for the Rural Payments Agency actually to administer it. So I'm looking to see what we can do to both simplify the scheme and make it more stable and predictable so that those who have to use it can have some confidence in it. I want to get this right so that we don't have to chop and change again.
It's so difficult for farmers, though, because that's what the last farming minister and Secretary of State also said. And here we are, over a year into a Labour government, and they still feel like they have no certainty. And some of them really felt like they were going to be on a cliff edge when it came to their funding.
Yes, and certainly that's why we've made the decision about these particular farmers in this instance. But I certainly hope to have the scheme up and running so we won't fall into this issue again and we can create a more stable future for what is actually a scheme that over this Parliament will actually deliver £11.8 billion of support for farmers.
Are you able to give any clarity on when the revised scheme, there'll be details about it and when applications may open?
Well, I'm looking at the design of it now and dealing with all of the details of that. And when I'm in a position to make announcements, I recognise this is not what you want me to say, but when I'm in a position to make announcements on that, I will as soon as possible.
So at the moment, we have no sustainable farming incentive. We have hastily implemented extensions to current schemes long after farming bodies told you that they were needed. A lot of farmers will be looking at the situation and going, it's just a bit of a mess, frankly, isn't it?
Well, I'm here to sort out a system so that we can get stability and predictability going forwards. And I hope that we're going to be in that position.
OK, and what do you say to those farmers who say that they can't plan for the future and they've just lost confidence now in this government?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And I hope that they will have a look at the new SFI scheme when we open it and think that they can contribute by applying to it.
Dame Angela Regal. Well, the other big issue on farmers' minds is inheritance tax. And over the past few weeks, there have been rumours that the government is considering changing its stance on that. In last year's budget, the Chancellor announced that farms worth more than £1 million would face a 20% inheritance tax from next April, with 10 years interest-free to pay it. Farming unions argue that this will mean many family farms will need to sell land, equipment or livestock to pay the tax, making their businesses unsustainable. And they hope that even if it wasn't scrapped, the threshold for it might be raised. But Dame Angela told Kaz there will be no U-turn.
The changes to inheritance tax for farm businesses that are due to start in April next year have caused a huge amount of worry for some farmers. How likely do you think it is that the Treasury may soften its stance and make some tweaks to this policy come the budget?
I mean, despite some of the speculation in the press, there's no likelihood that will happen. The announcements have been made and the situation will be as it was announced. But remember that 3/4 of estates will continue to pay no inheritance tax at all, while the remaining quarter will pay half of the inheritance tax that most people pay. So I'm afraid there aren't going to be any changes with respect to the announcements that were made previously about inheritance tax in this instance.
So you are quashing those rumours, no changes on inheritance tax to come?
Them.
Are you not even in discussions with the Treasury about it?
We have been in discussions. The Treasury have made their announcements and they aren't going to move.
Dame Angela Eagle, the Farming Minister. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Beatrice Fenton. And Farming Today this week is a BBC Audio Bristol production.